You know how we always hear about dog breeds being purpose-bred?
Right.
Like German Shepherds for police work and Bloodhounds for tracking.
Yeah,
Makes sense, right?
seems like it.
But what if those assumptions about a dog's skull shape and how it relates to their skills aren't the whole story?
Well, a new study from Chapman University is really making people rethink things.
Oh, interesting. Tell me more.
Yeah, so it was published in Science Advances, and, well, it challenges a lot of those beliefs that we've held for so long.
Okay, so, set the scene for us.
Sure.
What did they do?
They took 3D scans of 117 dog skulls.
Wow, that's a lot of skulls.
It is, from 40 different breeds, everything from bulldogs to German shepherds.
Okay, so the whole range.
The whole range. But they didn't stop there. They also included skulls from 18 wild canid species.
Like wolves and foxes and things like that?
Yeah, wolves, foxes, you name it. They wanted to see how domesticated dog skulls compared to their wild relatives.
So not just comparing breeds to each other, but sort of looking at the bigger picture.
Exactly, the bigger evolutionary picture, how they've changed and adapted over time.
That's really cool. And did they find what they expected?
Not quite.
Uh-oh, that's where it gets really interesting.
It does. There was a surprising amount of overlap in the skull shapes
Really?
across all those different dog breeds. Regardless of what we think they should be good at, their skulls didn't really match up.
Wait, so you're saying like a Doberman skull isn't actually built for a more powerful bite?
That's what the research is suggesting. They just didn't find clear differences when they compared breeds that are typically used for things like guarding or police work. The key skull features related to bite force were very similar.
Interesting.
Same thing for scent work. Those breeds that are known for their noses, they didn't actually have bigger or more complex nasal cavities.
Okay, this is already making me rethink everything I thought I knew about dog breeds.
It's a game changer.
Does this mean all those years of breeding for specific jobs was pointless? At least when it comes to skull shape.
Well, not necessarily. There's one really interesting exception. Brachycephalic breeds.
Like pugs.
Exactly, the flat-faced pups. Bulldogs, pugs, you know the ones.
Ah, yes, the smoosh-faced cuties. But, I mean, their skulls are definitely different from other breeds. Right?
Oh, absolutely. Their skulls are unique.
Right.
But the study thinks this is more because humans have been breeding them for looks
Oh, okay.
rather than function.
So, we've been shaping those dogs over the years for cuteness.
For cuteness, even if it hasn't been the best for their health. Or breathing.
Yeah, that's true.
Think about all those breathing problems.
So we prioritize those adorable wrinkles over functionality.
You got it.
Guilty as charged. But this brings up a big question.
Yeah.
If a dog's skull shape isn't the main thing that determines their abilities, what is?
That is the question, isn't it? And, the studies suggest that it might be behavior, like what you can actually see a dog doing.
Interesting.
And that behavior is probably influenced by both genetics and training.
So even though certain breeds have a reputation for being good at certain things, like herding or scent work, it's not just about their skull.
Exactly.
There's more to this story.
Much more. And to understand that more, they compared their findings on the domesticated dogs to the wild ones.
The wolves and foxes.
Exactly. And that's where they found a much clearer link between skull shape and function.
How so?
Well, for instance, wolves have those elongated snouts,
Right.
which are perfect for smelling. So their skull shape really reflects their lifestyle.
That makes sense.
In the wild, they need that sense of smell to survive. But it makes you think, what about our domesticated dogs?
Yeah.
If their skulls aren't always a good indicator of what they can do, what should we be paying attention to instead?
I don't know. What should we be paying attention to?
That's the big question, isn't it? And, this study is saying that we should be paying attention to a dog's behavior. What you can actually observe, that gives you a much better idea of what they can do. Think about it. You wouldn't judge a human athlete just by their bone structure, right?
That's a great analogy. You'd want to actually see them in action, understand their skills, their training, all of that. But how do they actually study behavior in this research?
Right, because we are talking about skulls.
Yeah.
But their findings really point toward behavior as this missing piece of the puzzle. They looked at previous studies that showed certain behaviors, like herding or retrieving, have a strong genetic component.
So a dog might be more inclined towards certain actions because of their genes.
Exactly. Every dog is an individual, but their DNA might give them a bit of a head start in certain areas.
So nature plays a role. But what about nurture? How does training fit into all of this?
Well, this is where things get really interesting, especially, for people like you, dog owners, because the study really highlights that genes aren't destiny. So even if a dog has a genetic predisposition, let's say for herding, the right training and environment are still crucial to help them actually develop those skills and excel.
So it's this dynamic duo, nature and nurture working together.
Exactly.
But let's go back to the skulls for a second.
Right.
You mentioned that they used 3D scanning. What did that actually involve?
Well, they took those 117 skulls and basically created these incredibly detailed digital models.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Think of it like this super high-tech way of capturing every little detail, every nook and cranny. And then they could use special software to analyze those digital skulls, looking at specific measurements, landmarks, things like that.
So they weren't just eyeballing it. They were getting really precise data.
Precise data. They were looking at things like the jaw muscle attachment points, muzzle shape, all to figure out how powerful that bite could be. And for smelling, they measured the size and complexity of the nasal cavity.
It makes sense. They were trying to see if certain breeds had a structural advantage, right? Like maybe those guarding breeds would have extra strong jaw muscles or something.
Yeah, you would think so, right.
Yeah.
But remember, they didn't find those clear-cut distinctions. Even with all of that precise data, the skull measurements for those bite work breeds overlapped significantly with other breeds.
So even if we perceive certain breeds as being better at certain tasks, like just because of how they look, the study is saying their skulls might not actually back that up.
That's a great way to put it. And remember, they analyzed a lot of skulls, over 100, covering a wide range of dogs and wild canids, so it wasn't just a small sample size. That's why their findings are so impactful.
This is truly fascinating. It really changes how we think about dog breeds and what they're capable of.
It does, doesn't it? And going back to the wild canids, remember how we talked about wolves and their snouts being so good for smelling? Well, in the wild, there's a much clearer link between skull shape and function. Which makes sense, right? Because out in nature, if you don't have the right skills to survive, you don't last very long.
That makes sense.
So over generations, those physical traits get really fine-tuned through natural selection.
Right, survival of the fittest. But it makes you think about how different things are for our domesticated dogs. We've been shaping them through breeding for so long, sometimes focusing on looks over functionality.
Absolutely.
Like those brachycephalic breeds we talked about.
Exactly. Those flat faces may be cute, but they can cause a lot of health problems for the dogs.
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about. We need to be mindful of those choices when we're breeding. But this study, it goes beyond just the physical traits, right?
Yeah.
It brings up all these really interesting questions about genetics and training. Like, what's really shaping a dog's behavior?
And that's what makes this research so exciting. It's not just about skulls. It's about this complex interplay between what's in their genes and what we do with them. Our canine companions are so much more than meets the eye.
And that understanding can really help us, right? Choose the right dog for a job, or even just, get along better with our own pets. It's like this study is opening up a whole new world.
It is. Think about it. What if we moved away from those rigid breed stereotypes? What if we started focusing on a dog's temperament, their drives, their learning abilities? We could be missing out on some truly amazing working dogs from breeds that we never even considered before because they didn't fit the mold.
I love that. It's like we're being challenged to see each dog as an individual, to appreciate their unique strengths and train them in a way that works for them. And maybe, just maybe, this could even teach us something about ourselves, how our own genes and experiences shape who we are.
I love that connection. It really makes you think, doesn't it? And that's what makes this research so compelling. It's not just about dogs. It's about challenging our assumptions, about embracing complexity, and recognizing the power of both nature and nurture in shaping life for both us and our canine companions.
This has been an incredible journey. We've gone from dog skulls to existential pondering. I love how a deep dive into one study can lead to such profound insights.
Me too. And I think this is the perfect moment to shift gears a little bit and really explore the implications of all of this. What does it all mean for the future of our relationship with dogs?
I'm ready. Let's dive into those implications right after this. Okay, so we're back, and we've talked a lot about this research on dog skulls.
We have a lot of skulls.
But now let's talk about, what it all means. For you, for the listener. If you're thinking about getting a dog or you already have one, how does this change things?
What really throws a wrench into all those, those ideas we have about different breeds, it's not that breeding for certain traits hasn't happened. It definitely has. But this study is showing us that just looking at a dog's skull isn't going to tell you the whole story.
It's like we've been judging a book by its cover. You see a German Shepherd and you just assume police dog. Maybe we need to rethink that.
Exactly. It's so much more complicated than that.
Oof.
Imagine, I don't know, a Jack Russell Terrier that's amazing at scent work, even though its skull isn't what you'd expect for a scent hound. This research suggests that that's totally possible.
That's pretty cool. So, what should we be looking at if we want to find the right dog for a job or even just understand our own dog better?
This study really highlights the importance of behavior, what you actually see the dog doing.
Okay.
Things like herding or retrieving, those actions, they probably have a genetic component, but they're also influenced by training, by environment, by all sorts of things.
So it's this mix of nature and nurture.
Exactly. It's a team effort.
Okay, but that raises another question then. If we're moving away from these breed stereotypes, how do we actually figure out what a dog is capable of?
Well, that's where you come in. As the owner or the potential owner, instead of getting hung up on breed, pay attention to their temperament, their drives, how easily they learn. You can observe those things. You can test them out through play and interaction. Get to know the dog as an individual.
That makes sense. It's like instead of this one-size-fits-all approach, we need to become detectives.
I like that. Dog detectives.
Observe their behavior, figure out their strengths, and then train them in a way that works for them. Not just based on what we think they should be good at because of their breed.
You got it. And who knows, maybe by doing that, we'll learn something about ourselves along the way. We're all individuals, right? Shaped by our genes and our experiences, just like our dogs.
It's amazing how everything is connected.
It is. But let's bring it back to our listeners for a second. They're probably looking at their dogs right now with a whole new perspective. So if there's one thing you want them to take away from this, what would it be?
What's the big takeaway?
Don't underestimate the power of individual variation. Every single dog is unique. So whether you're looking for a working dog or you just want a companion, look beyond those breed stereotypes. Pay attention to their behavior. Nurture their strengths. You might be really surprised by what you discover.
I love that. It reminds me of that saying, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, but the size of the fight in the dog.
That's perfect.
And it seems like this research really backs that up. It's not all about how they look or what breed they are, but about that inner spark, that drive that makes each dog special.
Exactly. And on that note, I think we'll leave you with one final thought to ponder. If skull shape isn't everything, what else might be shaping those amazing behaviors we see in dogs? Is it all in their genes? Or how they were raised? Or, some mysterious combination of the two? The answer, like most things in life, is probably much more complicated than we realize. So keep observing, keep learning, and keep celebrating the diversity of the dog world.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back next time with another fascinating topic. Until then, happy exploring.